Hey guys, it's Sherry Vegas and welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial today, we're going to be doing another textured artwork because you guys have been loving it so much, but this time we're going to be doing it with a little bit of a twist. So a new style of artwork that has become so popular recently is that textured style of artwork, and there's so many different ways you can do it. I am starting a full playlist of all the different ways that you can include texture into your artwork, so I'll add that playlist up above. But in today's tutorial, we're going to be doing this style. So I absolutely love this artwork and I think it's so cool and such an interesting take on that textured style. I love the sort of sculpture 3D elements to it and how it's a bit different. So I'm going to be showing you my version of it, how I would create it, but honestly there's probably a few different ways that you could create a piece like that. But in this tutorial I'm going to show you my way and how easy it is to do.
For this, I'm just going to be using some old cardboard rolls to create my base for my structured painting. And I've just got a really cheap stretch canvas. I think I got this one from Kmart. I would probably, if I was going to make a bigger one, I would use a wooden board like what I use in resin. But for this, because it's small, a stretch canvas is fine. And I'm also just going to be using a hot glue gun to attach my cardboard rolls. I'm just cutting my cardboard rolls down to size and working out my design. So this is just going to create a little bit of a base for me to drape my fabric on top to then start creating a little bit more detail. So if I just try to drape my fabric on top, I'm not going to get as much volume or as much of that 3D effect. But if I put something underneath like cardboard rolls, because they're cheap and everyone has them, or you could also use chicken wire if you wanted to, that's going to help create a base and give something for the fabric to sit on top and not completely sink down. I found using cardboard rolls to be great for this particular technique because it was really easy just to cut them down to size and shape them and manipulate them, and also just to glue them down with some hot glue. That was so simple. I know some people do use chicken wire to create their shape, but that will just take a little bit more effort, but whatever works for you. I particularly like this because one, everyone has cardboard rolls lying around, so just keep a few and then just cut them with just some kitchen scissors and shape them into place however you would like them to be. For this next step, I just got some plaster of Paris, which I got from my local art store, and then measured that out and added that into a bowl. This is my art bowl. It's not a kitchen bowl. I always have a few art bowls lying around that just get used for art purposes. Then I added my water in and gave that a good mix up for a few minutes just to make sure that the plaster of Paris had combined with the water properly. This was a little bit more liquidy than what it said to do. I just did it with this the first time while I add the fabric in because I just really wanted that to be able to soak into the fabric. So I added a little bit more water than what it said to do on the packet just to soak that, and I didn't want it to be too thick or gloggy for the first layer. So once you have soaked your fabric, and this fabric I just got from Spotlight and it's very cheap, I think it was like $4 per meter, and I just got 2 meters of that and only ended up using about half a meter for this size canvas. I then placed that over the top of my canvas and started to work on my shape. And you can see here that those cardboard rolls underneath have really given it volume, and it's really helping with creating the design and the shape because the fabric isn't just collapsing in on itself, it's got something underneath to support it. I fiddled around with it for a little bit, and then once I was happy, I just went around and cut off all of that extra fabric and just left about an inch or like a few centimeters, just so that way I did have a little bit of a safety net that I could tuck underneath of my canvas. Once I trimmed my fabric, I then put a few cups underneath my canvas just to elevate it off the table, because when I do start applying the next few layers, I don't want to accidentally glue my piece to the table. This also allowed me to tuck that extra fabric underneath just while I was slowly building up that shape, because the fabric is still quite soft at this moment. It's got a little bit of stiffness because of the plaster, but it still has a lot of flexibility in it, so I need to be very gentle and not move it too much because I'll lose the shapes that I'm happy with. I let that set for a few hours, and then I mixed up my next batch of plaster of Paris. I did plaster of Paris because I just wanted to do a really thin layer. The fabric is still quite soft and flexible at this point, so if you were to do a really thick and heavy layer, you're going to end up weighing it down in some points where it doesn't have those cardboard rolls underneath it, and you're going to change the shape. So I did a really thin layer. I did end up switching from plaster of Paris because I did find it got quite lumpy as I was working with it, and then some areas it took forever to set and it was quite powdery afterwards, and I just wasn't happy with that finish, so I switched over to using just some gap filler or spackle, whatever you like to call it. I just got this from a hardware store, and honestly I picked this one because it said it didn't crack, and that's what I was after. I then applied that with a paintbrush, and I did so many layers. I ended up going through 2 tubes of this. I really liked this effect, so I definitely, if I was going to do this again, I would use that spackle again. So yeah, lots and lots of layers. I think I did around 7 to 8 layers until I was happy with the finish. I also made sure I went down around the sides and just made sure that they were super smooth as well. When I did go to buy more, I accidentally bought the wrong type, and I ended up getting the wide crack filler, which was okay, but it did have a bit of a rougher texture to it, so I definitely stick to the finer one if I was to do this one again, and just make sure that I had 2 to 3 tubes, because you do go through a decent amount. But I flipped it over just to make sure that the bottom got done as well, and that way it was all nice and smooth the whole way around. I also sanded underneath to smooth that out, just so that way it wasn't uneven, and then I just gave it a sand on top to remove any sort of harsh lines or anywhere that there was just too much texture. I used a really fine grit sandpaper and just went over it really gently. This took a few days to get up to this step because you have to wait a few hours in between each layer. So once it was all fully dried and sanded back, I then started to paint it white. I'm just using a titanium white acrylic paint. You could also use a spray paint or whatever kind of paint you want to use, and in whatever color you want to use. I just had an acrylic paint on hand and just used a small brush to get into all of those little gaps, and I did about 2 layers to completely cover this.
I think this piece has turned out super cool, and I'm so happy with it. Obviously you could paint it whatever color you wanted. I just went with white because that matches the original styles that I did show you. And don't forget to check out those artists that I got the original inspiration from. I'll add them in the description down below. But I think this is really cool, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. I really want to start making some bigger pieces in a few different colors. I think would be really cool. But as always, if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. It really helps my channel out. If you're new to my channel, please do subscribe, as I post new art videos every single week. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so that way you get notified every single time I do post a new video. And if you haven't already, go and check out my playlist of textured artwork. I'm going to keep adding more to that, but there's a really good base to get started if you want to start working with textured sort of paste as your medium.